In this video, we're going to learn how to find the roots of a quadratic equation by completing the square. We've already learned how to find the roots by factoring, and that's what you see right here. This is what we learned a while ago. You just factor the trinomial by figuring out 4 and 2 are the two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 6. Factor it so each factor equal to 0, and then solve for x to get that the two roots are -2 and -4. Now this is a great method, and it's actually a lot easier than completing the square. But it only works if you can find factors of c that add to b. In this case, we were. What we're going to learn to do today is factor when we can't find two numbers that multiply to c and add to b. An example of a problem like that is right here, x squared plus 10x plus 8. Right, and it's set equal to 0 because we're solving for the roots. So, maybe when you get this problem, you go ahead and try to factor it and look for factors of 8 that add to 10, but there aren't any two numbers that do that meet both of those requirements. So factoring and the whole diamond method won't work for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square. And so this is going to start out just like the problems when we were finding the vertex, right? So to complete the square, you always first have to identify b. So in this problem, b is 10. And then remember, we always divide it by 2 and then square it. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. And 5 squared is 25. So 25 is like that magic number that'll help us make the perfect square trinomial. So that means we're going to have to add it and subtract it. So I start by rewriting the first two terms. So I say x squared plus 10x. And then I add 25, because I got it right here. And I subtract it. And then I bring down the plus 8 equals 0. Right, hopefully this feels familiar because we've done this process before. So now I need to factor the trinomial, so I take the first three terms, x squared plus 10x plus 25. So I need two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10. So if you like, you can put those in a diamond. Look for two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10. Go ahead, pause, and take a second to come up with those numbers. So if we came up with 5 and 5, and remember the trick is that these numbers are always going to be the same as b before you square it, right? So it's going to be 5. So that would mean our factors were x plus 5 and x plus 5. And because they're the same, we can just write it as x plus 5 squared. So what we've just found is a different way to write this trinomial would be as this binomial squared. So we write x plus 5 squared, and then I bring down the minus 25 plus 8 equals 0. And the next step is to simplify -25 plus 8. So I start by rewriting x plus 5 squared. And then I'm simplifying, or combining like terms. So -25 plus 8 is -17, and I bring down the equals 0. So at this point we've completed the square, and hopefully you recognize that this right now is in vertex form. So I have my binomial squared, and this is simplified. So the vertex of this quadratic is -5, -17. But this problem isn't asking us to find the vertex, it's asking us to find the roots. So we're not done yet, right? So the roots are the x value when y is 0. That's why this equation is set equal to 0. But we don't know what x is right now because all of this stuff is bothering it, which means we need to solve for x. So now we're going to be solving an equation where there's a square, kind of like we were doing in the lesson before. So I need to get x by itself. The first thing I have to do is to get rid of this -17 because it's furthest away and it's outside the parentheses. So the opposite of -17 is plus 17. So I add 17, and what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So these -17s are going to cross out, and I'm going to bring down on this side the x plus 5 squared because that's all that's left. And I bring down the equal sign, and on this side I'm simplifying, and 0 plus 17 is positive 17. So I'm out of room, which means I'm going to have to go to another screen. So at this point, go ahead and pause before I go on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rewrite this x plus 5 squared equals 17 on the next screen, but you should already have it, so you don't need to rewrite it. Okay, so it's right there. So this entire binomial is being squared. I need to get rid of the square, which means I'm going to have to take the square root of the entire thing because the whole thing is being squared. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm also going to do it to the 17. The square and the square root cancel out. So on this side, all I'm left with now is x plus 5. I bring down my equal sign. I took the square root of 17, but that could give me a positive and it can give me a negative value. So I write plus or minus root 17. Now, what's left bothering x? The plus 5. So to get rid of it, I subtract 5 to both sides. That's going to cancel out, and I'll bring down the x. And now I write this with the negative 5 first. So I'll write minus 5, and then I'll bring down the plus or minus root 17. And then just like what we were doing last video, I have to write this twice, once with the plus sign, once with the minus sign. So go ahead and do that on your own now. So once you do that, you should have it written just like this. One time with the plus sign, and then another time with the minus sign. Notice that this is a negative 5, it stays negative for both of them. At this point, go ahead and plug in the first value of x into your calculator. So put in negative 5 plus square root 17. Press pause now. That should give you x equals negative 0.877. I know after the first 7 there was a 6, but after that there was an 8, so that rounded the 6 up to a 7. So now I'll go ahead and pause and put negative 5 minus root 17 into your calculator. And that gives you negative 9.123. So that means that our roots are negative 0.877 and negative 9.123. Go ahead and press pause and make sure you have all of this down. I'm going to recap very quickly. So when we can't factor a trinomial, meaning when there aren't factors of c that add to b, we complete the square and get into vertex form like we did when we're finding the vertex. But then we have to keep solving for x. So you have to eliminate everything that's bothering x until you get your true values for x, and those are your roots. Good luck in the practice.